we've known each other for 15 years.
I probably would have made this movie if I was never an actor. It didn't feel like I was graduating into like, now I want to check that box. Even though we were, sorry.
What?
What? No.
Well, oh God.
So that should be the intro, by the way. Are you okay?
Yeah, are you okay?
I feel like, wait, but I'm not even kidding, because that is often how we greet each other.
So are you, yeah. Okay.
Are you okay?
Yeah, so let's start. We're starting?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's use this and begin. So, okay, we're here and we're sitting down in these two chairs, and it's great to see you again.
Always.
I think the last time I saw you, we were standing. And so it's great to see you in this capacity. So, okay, I'll just start if you don't mind. Well, we've known each other for a long time. Like, we've known each other for 15 years, I think, right? It must be 15.
I was 17 when we met.
How old are you?
I'm 35.
Oh my God, we've known each other for longer than that. Jesus Christ. Oh my God, really?
Yeah, it's scary time.
18 years. Oh my God. Oh my God, wow, that's so strange.
Yeah.
And it's so great to see you.
I've known you longer than I was alive before I know.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think you probably would have felt that way anyway, but here it's true.
Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way. I feel like I've known you for more than I've not.
Many lives.
Yeah. I saw your movie now, like, I don't know, 24 hours ago. And first of all, I was just like blown away from multiple perspectives. My first one was, wait, we could do that? I didn't know like we could do that. And what I mean by that is like, it's just such an unbelievably audacious thing that you did, A. B, I don't know how you conveyed it to other people. Like, I had more questions after I saw it. First of all, I loved it. I didn't have questions like, I had questions like, I'd never seen anything like this thing. Maybe it's my movie ignorance. I've never seen anything like a movie like this. I've never seen something made like this by somebody I know who's also like kind of a funny person, who's like verbal like me. And so I was like, and then I was really just struggling to figure out like how you made it, how you told other people what it's gonna be, what does the script look like, how do you tell the actors these are your scenes, and oh, this scene applies to this age, and you know, because the whole thing felt like this incredible feeling collage. How do you tell the sound designers we want it to feel like this buzzing, which reminds us of this feeling of her being underwater 20 minutes ago? And so I was just sat there just wondering, like, on like a purely like practical level, what does the script look like? How do you conceive of something like this? What is the book doing that you're taking from? Could you give me any answers to any of these?
I'm so glad that this has been recorded because I want to have that.
Oh,
what
you're
you just
sweet.
said.
No, but really, I was astounded. So please. But what's the first question I could ask you? You read this book, and I know these are junket questions, but you read this book, and you thought I could make a movie of this? Is this what happened? Yeah,
so it's like, I think this story in a synopsis is alienating and not material that I would like want to unearth, if not for like its ability to transform into something positive. The whole book is written in a series of...
Yeah. That's the buzzing I was referring to.
Yeah.
It's like she's swimming again.
That self-soothing inner hum.
Exactly.
So basically, I read the book, and you know, it's cathartically unearthing, even if you've not had like substance abuse issues, and if you're, you know, father and you have a fairly positive relationship. It's that like there was like an atmosphere of kind of like trespass and you know, like we're both fairly shy people, but there's like an innate stifling kind of invisibility that women have to grapple with, even if they weren't abused by their father. There was something in the form of the book that I thought spoke so directly to what movies can do when you trust them, and when you can like trust not an audience, but like other people to receive a thought as it comes together.
I only want the best for you.
I didn't want to make statements, like I didn't want to be like, this is what the movie's about. It's the whole thing sort of was not about synopsis, but about synapse. It's like, I think if you have a little bit of trust in your own developing thoughts, that there's so much to posit into a narrative as it's developing versus when it's just the result of something. And so I was like, I really wanted to see the iteration of an experience, and I wanted to make a movie about how writing can save you, how art can save you, how it's kind of like a necessary, or even if you're not producing something for other people to consume, there are kind of artful and poetic ways that you can explore your interior landscapes in relation to time that felt like the only way that you could convey that in art is to edit it. And also to shoot like on film, not because it's like nostalgic and grainy, but because there are such gaping holes in between the pictures that we take. So you could really insert your own life into those chasms. Like there was just something about the book that spoke to the universality of being a young girl trying to excavate a voice that's been told to, you know, shut up and change itself in order to not be heard.
Don't you dare.
I had to continuously, every single day, remind people that we were doing a poem.
That's kind of what I was wondering. Is that how you framed it to both people who were like paying for you to do the movie and also like people in the movie and cinematographer, obviously, that this is like a poem? Don't think of this as like a literal thing? Or what? How do you frame it to people so that they get on board with something that I imagine is really impossible to conceive until you see it?
I think the movie is about trusting yourself and listening to yourself, which is hard to do, and it is not straightforward. And it's so encouraging to see something try and kind of figure out its voice before it does. Because at the end of the movie, it becomes quite composed. We know what year it is. We know what time it is. We know like where she's at in her life.
Right, she's reached a plateau. And,
yeah. And in the beginning, it's like, you should be able to, you know, anytime anyone was like, what year is it? Which performer at this time? I'm like, it's Emmy all the time unless she's under, you know, 15. Like you hold so much so close. There are striking images that just define who you think you are. And as much as it's like the further and distant and more distant memories sometimes take kind of like really architectural like shapes that are unsubstantiated by continuity, where you're like, I know that feeling, but I don't know how I got there, and I don't know what happened after.
Precisely, and this is the problem with talking about the movie, because I was trying to describe it to my wife, and like it's so hard to talk about because you end up relying, for me at least, I end up relying on these like narrative threads, and then she finds writing, and then she meets this guy, and it's like it doesn't at all in any way like describe what the experience is like, because as you said, it's like a synapse thing, it's a visceral quality. And so to me, it just seems like one of these things that, you know, one of the things I was thinking about, like just in terms of like you and me talking about this stuff, like we do have an advantage of being like known actors. And so it allows us, I think, or maybe even gives us the responsibility to maybe make something that like is a little harder to convey. I think you've done that like 1,000 times more than I have, like because your movie is very, very hard to convey. My movie is just maybe a little tonally unusual, but your movie is like, what is the word? Like formally unusual. Do you think that part of the reason you were able to do something so formally unusual and abstracted, and the result is astounding, but that's not a guarantee, is partly because like you're a known person, you've shown you have good taste, you've worked with all these people, and there's like a bit of comfort with you doing it versus somebody else?
Yeah, and it wasn't easy for me to do it
Of
either.
course,
I mean, it took
I know.
like so many
I
years
read
and like
8 years or something.
Yeah. I think there were people that loved me that were just genuinely sick and tired of hearing me be so upset about something, because like there were so many other versions of my first choice, like something more contained, whether it was adaptation or originally personal. I was so convinced that the way that I could kind of stick something into the ground that wasn't going to go anywhere was to stick to the form thing, like the whole. I didn't want to make a movie about oppression, and like, yes, of course, those things are baked into the, you know, the plot of the movie, but it's about the malleability of our own realities, and what more than this particular medium. Like that it's like you watch a fucking Tarkovsky movie and you go, oh, you are allowed to bring people into your kind of fleeting, flitting back and forth, but completely precisely emotionally connected experience, even though on paper you might not be kind of like, I think visually, you create striking images and you sonically tie them together with a kind of haunted house net of what it feels like to be one person. it's an easy movie to watch, and it's actually fun because it kind of reminds you of what it feels like to have a kind of scatterbrained
Of course.
experience.
It's engaging in a way that like is fun. I don't know how to describe it if you're seeing the worst things happen to this person, but there's like a joy in it.
But the whole reason it's fun is because it wouldn't exist without her telling you. So halfway through you go, oh, this person who's like a sort of unreliable narrator who's frustrating, who's very unruly, like you kind of don't know what to expect from her often. It doesn't matter because you're only receiving this story through her own volition. Like, it's like if she didn't get this done, we wouldn't be getting this story. When she titles The Chronology of Water halfway through the movie, and you're like, oh, this person who's barely can hold her head above water clearly is the reason we have received this book and this movie and this movie of this book. It's like totally in her hands.
In the story, I say,
this is what it feels like to be me. A woman who teaches English.
I guess I was asking before if I can ask it better, which is like...
I can answer it better.
No, this is my question. Did you feel a responsibility to make something that was like more unusual because you're a well-known actor, or is this just entirely your taste?
This is entirely my taste.
I
could
believe that.
never make something straightforward. I mean,
okay, got it.
I mean, like there are, this movie will never happen again. It's so particularly kind of like spiritually base. It's about being allowed to talk. And so it kind of broke a seal for me as a person who wants to express.
Yeah, you felt like you had the flexibility to do it this way because of what the story is.
The mission statement of the story is like, no, dude, commit to demanding patience from people who want to listen versus needing to satisfy a kind of in all these interviews, I always feel like I'm like teaching a lesson on the movie and diluting the point. It's like, this is for other people to put themselves and their lives into.
Of course. No,
and
it's diluting it, I get it.
Like the idea of making a movie that
a more literal kind of
I
thing.
just couldn't. Yeah. No,
really?
No.
Even though you've acted in those and you obviously see the value in them, because
sometimes they're fun, for sure. But
it's just not your taste at all.
Like, so, I like associative, poetic, kind of like open-ended things that are precise and say something very particular, but that invite people to like disagree. That invite people to have completely different experiences with the movie.
Why do you think that's your taste? Like, how did that develop? The reason I ask is because, like, I
don't like being told what to do. I don't want to tell people what to do.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you're right. That's it. I had this like memory when I was watching your movie of, I think you gave me a script like 10 years ago that you wrote as a short film of somebody on a beach dying of thirst.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You know what's interesting about it? When I read it, I had the same thought as when I saw your movie. I was like, oh, this is how her mind works. This is fascinating. And it makes more sense than what I would have expected, which is like, I don't know, something like you and me talking.
Well, it's like, I think like I guess, I'm not a writer. I really do. Writing is like sort of a necessary thing to get to the thing that I want to do, which is shoot something. And this book, I mean, the script was so dense. We cut 5 movies out of the movie. The next thing I want to do, like I want to do something incredibly lean so it can expand and breathe and come much more alive and become larger once we start shooting it. Yeah, rather than trimming in post. I mean, like, wow.
Was that just a coincidence that you wrote this thing about this woman who's like desperate for water, that she's like crawling on a beach dying?
It is a coincidence, I swear.
Okay, got it.
Although there must be some kind of like fixation that I have. I'm such a house cat that doesn't like to even stick a paw into a sink.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
yeah,
got
so
it.
I'm like, I think there's something about sort of relinquishing control and floating and how much I admire people that can do that in like sort of just naturally, and then also when it does happen that you realize that's when you give into. It's the same thing as shooting something. You know, I prepped it for 8 years and I was so obsessive about every striking image because we didn't get them, the movie wouldn't come together because there were no scenes to rely on really.
Of course.
And we shot so much, and you can feel like the life that she lives in between the moments that we actually do have on screen. Where you're like, I can feel that this is a glimpse of a much larger, it's like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, that's what's so great, yeah.
But at the same time, if you don't really get some kind of seminal, impactful things that just stick with you and have sister images, brother images, like things that are married to other aspects, then it's like you just kind of fail. And what I could have made was something that like lacked the invitation to figure out what you're saying as you're saying it, and the kind of faith in other people to find that interesting, that it's much less interesting to be like, I did all my homework here in the dark before I got here, and
Right.
I did all the thinking for you, and now that I'm here, I know exactly what it's supposed to say. It's like, yeah, but isn't it more fun? And it's a
You're
really...
describing my process entirely.
Yeah, I mean, but like, yeah, exactly. You're like, I did here you go.
Mainly doing homework.
No,
yeah.
but it's like, it is also related to like the kind of female experience of expressing yourself, being an artist who deserves to take up space. Anything diaristic or personal becomes narcissistic and boring and small. And I was like, no, I want the girl to take her time. I want the movie to be adolescent until it's wise. And so it doesn't make it easy for people to swing with you. It's like, they're like, wait, but what's it gonna be? I'm like, I don't know. And it is okay to not, in fact, it's not okay to not know. You're lying if you're saying you do. And I would like to invite people into this vulnerable process of kind of watching this Frankenstein of a life stand up and become something that can create life and hold it. But at first you're like, she's not gonna be okay. And you're like, well, I mean, have a little faith.
The thing you're describing that to you sounds so like obvious and intuitive is, I think, probably the opposite of how 99% of people make anything, especially a movie, where it's like kind of expensive and you have people flying into the country in which you
it's a lot of
decided to
pressure.
do it in, and you know, you have 8 hours and it's gonna rain and all this stuff. Like, and the thing you're describing, when we first started talking and I said like, I didn't know we could do this, that's what I'm referring to. I have this shot I wanted to bring up from the movie, which is just like this thing. I don't know if you could see it, but you know this shot?
Yeah, oh my
I guess
God.
the platform that it was sent to me on was not secure, and I was able to take a screenshot.
It doesn't even have Eisenberg.
I know, it should. I usually write
And
my
also,
name on
gosh,
top of
the fact
things,
that you
but
watched this movie like on your computer, I swear to God, I'm gonna kill myself.
why would you kill, why does that, why?
It just,
Oh, because the imagery, et cetera, it should be on a
the
screen.
imagery, like big,
Okay, well,
sure, whatever, but it's like,
everybody
but it's
watching this,
also,
go out to the thing.
please, but it's like the sonic experience that's like, you know, when something comes from behind you instead of like the front.
I'm aware of that. I
You
was
know
taking
about
all that into
movies?
account.
Have you ever made a movie?
Yeah, I was taking all that into account. This might have been better if the glass broke behind my head, not there. But listen,
Yes.
what I was wondering is this: like, does a thing like that? So what that is she's having a conversation, and she like unconsciously touches the foot of the kid, and it's just like you're just like I couldn't believe that, because it's so much better, I felt, than like all of the planning that I do. And what I'm doing with the planning is making something good and like exactly what's in my head for months, years, whatever. But it would definitely not have something like that. And so it's like jumping without a net. You know, it's like you're gonna get something like that, which to me is like, shit, that's like the goal. Like if you can get something like that. But I would never allow myself to do that. I can make 100 movies, I'll never allow myself to get that shot, because it would mean
God, I wish I watched A Real Pain yesterday because I could pick out 10.
there's no foot on foot. But
What
like,
about your little feet?
yes,
They
but
were
those were planned.
so
I
cute.
storyboarded my feet.
You
know?
can't watch yourself in movies. How did you do
Yeah.
this?
Well, wait, we'll get to
How could you watch your feet in movies if you can't even watch your face in
That's
movies?
the one thing. You know how you have a proudest body? No,
You feel like
no,
you
I
have
like
pretty feet.
But like, is that something that came out there, or did you were like, oh, that's like the most brilliant image in the world. I want to see if we can engineer that in some way.
No, I saw that happen. I didn't see that happen on the day. I saw that
it's
in
an
the
edit.
edit, and I was like, oh my God, the foot. Yeah.
Oh, so you're watching carefully in editing because the movie is a poem. Like I'm watching carefully in an edit, but I'm just trying to get the thing I want.
Yeah,
You're looking for
interesting.
magical little things.
Yes.
And
Because
a lot of the movie is made up that way?
I figured out, I was like hazed by the chaos of this film and kind of jumped into this experience like violently. I had to break away from things that I was attached to that I thought gave the whole movie its flotation. The flotation devices that I thought it would fail without.
Yeah.
A lot of them were destroyed by us all on
I'm
set.
not surprised.
Yeah.
Given the nature of the movie.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
And I realized like kind of a weekend that if you were just staring at the movie that you wanted to make, that you were ignoring a lot. This is so obvious, but if you're so kind of narrow visioned, then you're not looking at the worlds that you're...
I don't look at the world, yeah.
And you're not looking at the
No,
world.
not at all, no.
I'm looking at the world, dude,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
you have to, because my ideas are fine, but they will sort of make love with the world that they live in and make something new, like make this baby of the two ideas, like, you know, just the unexpected nature of all these people on set and the kind of like chaos of weather and the chaos of time and how impossible it is to control those two things.
Right.
There were things I couldn't see on set. I came home and I unwrapped beautiful gifts that actually did
Yeah.
stand in for things that were destroyed on set.
That's
And then there were certain images that were like, without that thought that drove me to want to make this movie a book that I had 8 years ago,
Yeah.
the movie wouldn't exist. And then
Right.
there's other, like, what I find to be seminal images from my film, which sounds so silly to say, but like this bleeding trophy,
Yeah, I love it.
it was just on that's Lydia's trophy. It was just on the whatever, her shelf.
Right.
And this kid's crying and like, there are these like sort of jagged teeth that the sheet is creating in front of her face, like she's being sort of like half bitten. And then she like looks up. I just saw that when she was looking up to kind of like, I was like, look up to the sky, sort of be like, please, is anyone ever gonna like help me? And then it was like, oh shit, she's looking at this trophy. And then I was like, give me some blood. And we just like made the trophy bleed.
Wow.
Without a couple of those images, the movie would sort of be about the base terms of plot, how she lived her life, whatever. But those are the things, is like, take out the scene, take out the dialogue. That one picture just does everything.
That is
You just have to
fascinating.
stay like open to it.
I really do think what you're describing is not only like very specific to you and your taste, but like something that is just never done. I just don't think I like
but
what
we
you're
like
describing.
act like that.
Sorry?
Like, even though we were
What?
what?
Well, oh God. Oh no.
No,
I've
but like
devolved
when
into you.
we've done 3 movies together and we've
Yes.
worked with very, very different directors.
Yeah.
Like hyper different. And I still think that like there was always stuff that we would, be so self-critical and kind of really self-lacerating when we
Yeah.
didn't do it how we thought it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you saw those movies because you don't watch your movies, but when I watched the movies that we did together, all the things that we were like destroying ourselves about that felt like failures, and
Yeah.
we would be like, let's eat a cookie about it because we haven't eaten in 3 days.
Yeah.
They're the
Oh my God,
best
you have a good memory.
moments.
You're so sweet.
Yeah, but they're like the things that were like, oops. And it's
Yeah.
not, and the oops, they're not mistakes, and it's not like, ooh, we got so lucky.
Right.
It's that the feelings that you
Yeah.
have, the prep that you do, the exacting imagery, the exacting emotions that you're like,
Yeah.
if I don't accomplish that, then I've failed.
Right.
Something else happens where in the striving,
Yeah.
you do find something else that you can't see
You're
in
right
the
about
moment.
that.
And then afterwards, that's why you should watch the movies that we did together, because
go
there's like
back now.
so much
Yeah.
stuff that you're like, oh man,
Is it okay
what?
if I don't do it in the theater?
Sure, I'll send you maybe, can you watch the like thumbnails?
Yeah.
You
I'll
just
do
look
it
at
in
a couple
the corner
pictures.
Of my screen. Yeah. I read something you said which I thought was so funny and reminded me of myself, which was like, somebody asked you, do you think of being an actor in a movie now differently? And you're like, yeah, of course. I will just go to the director and say, I'll do whatever you want me to do.
Yeah.
I had that exact same feeling because I did that movie. I did a real
I'll
thing,
never
and then I just
question
did like,
anything again.
of course not. No.
I'm like, no, because what do you know?
Exactly.
I mean, like, I have my little feelings about like the
Yes.
the ways that I've responded
You have
to like
no idea that
random
the shot is actually of a door above your head.
No,
I know.
I know. I'm like, anything you want. Like the idea of being like, I think you should cast this person. I'm like,
Yeah.
excuse me?
I know.
You don't know anything about what you're saying.
Isn't that fascinating? I think probably a lot of people in our position go the other way. They feel even more kind of like they need to control things because they had an experience where they were controlling everything.
Right.
But I was so fascinated to read that about you and like also knowing you. And so one of the stories when people ask me about you, because I've been asked about you for now, I guess, 18 years.
People keep doing it. It's really nice. You're doing a lot of work.
What's that?
You're doing God's work, trying to make me seem
Promote
cool.
you. This story you always, the story I always tell about you is like when we were doing this movie Adventureland, there was like a more like dramatic scene at night, and you were like cut, I'm lying. I was like,
I know, you always
she's
say-
17. That was an amazing story because first of all, I thought when we were doing the movie, I remember just thinking like, this is the most talented person I've worked with, and you were 17 years old, and I was like shocked. Greg Mottola directed it too. It was like, yeah, this is like a shocking amount of skill or feeling something, intensity, something. And so like when you did that, I was like, oh my God, I felt like I was watching like a master. Like anyway, I always thought that was interesting because now you're like,
Don't
I'll
do
do-
that.
well,
Yeah.
would you have done that now? Because now you're like, oh, like, because remember Greg said in that take, Greg was like, oh, it
I
was
was
great. I
loving
didn't
it.
know why you
Yeah.
I didn't know why you felt that way.
Yeah.
Would
Well,
you-
I get mad at people now for cutting because you're like, I know that you questioned yourself, but that little
you have
moment of
no
question
idea.
was
yeah,
dope.
you have no idea how good it was.
Yeah.
I had the same thing.
I want to try to not
yeah.
do that anymore.
I don't. I
Like
don't
push through.
I just,
There are just moments where suddenly you fall out of yourself completely, and then you're like, I love lamp. Like there's no reason to
Exactly.
keep going on I love lamp. You know what I mean? It's like I'm telling you right now, the thoughts aren't. Sometimes you can be wrong, and the things that you're feeling are landing very differently on other people.
Yeah.
And so maybe don't ruin whatever that can be misinterpreted. But
Exactly.
I don't want to be misinterpreted. Like
Totally.
I want to have a feeling.
You want to feel control over your thing.
I want congruency.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and I think that those are better moments. The congruent emotional moments are better than when you're like, no, but it seemed like you were feeling it. I'm like, I don't care.
I don't care either. I always
wasn't.
said, I don't care if it looks good. I want to do it again. I don't care
Yes,
if it seems right.
I know. I'm selfish. I want to like taste it.
I also want to have that experience. Yes,
Yeah.
you want to have the
I
experience.
want to make it a memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want the catharsis. One of the other stories I tell from Adventureland, when people were asking me about like directing, I always tell the same story about Greg Mottola because there was a scene. You weren't in it. It was just like me saying goodbye to my family, whatever. It was a really quick scene, which is probably why you weren't in it. You were in the meat of the movie. But this was a brief scene that, was played over a montage. But nonetheless, I remember like I was saying a little thing to my parents, and I had a panic attack, which I would call like my first panic attack thing on a set, where I just shut down. You know that feeling? You're just like,
Yes.
I'm on camera. If I go like this, people will see that I'm going like this. I go like this. Just a very self-aware in the worst possible way, and I froze.
Yeah.
And I told Greg, I'm so sorry. After the take, I was mortified and sad. I felt feeling again because I was embarrassed. I was like, I'm so sorry. I think I had a panic attack. He goes, well, I didn't notice, but I'm so sorry you felt that way. And he said, come here. So we went under the tree on this front lawn, and he said, I don't understand how actors aren't having panic attacks all the time.
All the time.
I watch you guys, and so this is what he told me.
But
He said,
we were.
We were.
I was 17.
We were, but we were
you-
in the minority. I think the others were pretty chuffed to be there.
Yeah.
But he told me he's like, you have to be like vulnerable, and you're in front of people. You're in front of like tough people who are strangers to you, and like you have to be vulnerable and do this thing. Anyway, so he said this to me, and I remember thinking after that for years. I remember thinking like, it's a sweet thing he said, but come on, he's pitying actors too much. Come on, we're lucky. We have an easy job. We got to memorize lines, And then after directing movies, and especially directing like great actors and seeing them, I realized, yeah, it's amazing. I remember like Julianne Moore was in my first movie and she was crying. And I remember I went over to her, I was like, are you okay doing this? Are you okay doing this? And she's like, yeah, it's fine. Do you want me to cry here or do you want me to cry when I pull in? I was like, pull in, we here. Are you okay? I feel so guilty. And then after it was over, I was like, thank you for that gift. I didn't know what to say to her. I thanked her for a gift.
I know you want to like kiss their feet.
Yeah.
I know.
Because I'm like, oh my God, it was so hard. And Julianne, as you know, she's like, oh, it's great. No, it's great. We can go on to the next,
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's just this weird thing where like now I have a respect for the job in a way that I never did personally, because I think I was like so self-critical that I couldn't have a kind of good feeling about it, because it seemed like, oh, but you're overpaying me for this little thing. You know what I mean? And now I'm like, I remember Julianne Moore, the same thing in the first movie. I was like, I remember after the first scene that she did, I turned to my producer and I was like, can we just pay her more? Because already she was getting like a lot for like, I mean, not a lot, but like a tiny budget movie, the actors like not getting scale. You're like, oh my God, we have to pay them so much. Again, she was getting a tiny amount of money, but like I remember turning to my producer and be like, we should pay them more. They're worth half the budget, whatever. And I have that feeling more now. Don't you have that feeling? Like Imogen, like, don't you feel like, oh, she was like this amazing gift to me?
Yeah, but say you came to be in a movie that I was directing and you kind of had to like stretch yourself and do things that made you uncomfortable and filled with anxiety, but then kind of introduced you to aspects of yourself. Wouldn't you feel, like on movies that I'm given by directors—
I know, you feel grateful.
So unbelievable, to be like, how did you do this? I could never have done this like alone. I would have, no amount of therapy, like no amount of fantasy kind of weird inner projections into dreams or whatever kind of weird meditative shit you do to explore yourself, like never could I have gotten close to this thing, like without you.
I do feel that way, but I also feel, like probably a lot of people, I feel kind of like imposter fraud or whatever you want to call it. So like when they're doing my lines, I'm like, I just wrote this in the library. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like where I'm directing them in Shakespeare and they're lucky to get to do this stuff. Like it's an unvalidated script until people think it's good.
Completely.
So like they're just there like doing this thing and she had to memorize it so she didn't see her kids over the week. And this is what's going through my head. Not
no,
like,
and they have to, I mean—
she's lucky to be here. Yeah, let's see what you can do. Action. I don't have that feeling at all. No, I feel like
No.
thank you,
I'm on the
you.
floor. I'm like, if we have to walk across the street, maybe you walk on my back.
Yeah, exactly
like,
that.
Yeah.
How did you cast Imogen? I actually did 3 movies with her, but not in the same way I've done 3 movies with you. But like I've known her for a long time, and I just have obviously high opinion of her.
You're one of the reasons that I was like, I'm sure that we would be close because you guys are friends.
Yeah.
Like she was friends with Anton. Like she's friends with Alia Shawkat. There are just so many people that are like some of our absolute favorite sort of like
But
true
how did you
blue.
choose her? I mean, it's not a British character. It's this other thing. Like for a million reasons, I would not have pictured her. She's obviously a brilliant performance.
It's insane.
She's great in everything. Of course, she's an amazing actor. But like, she wouldn't have been the first person I would have thought of for this part in this story.
Really?
Yeah, I would have thought, somebody, with like kind of a Midwestern American thing. I don't know, just something that didn't feel really urbanite and
Yeah,
British.
yeah,
and,
yeah, yeah.
Imogen has those feelings in my head because I know her well.
Yeah, yeah.
So how did that happen?
I know she has kind of, she has a kind of like bro-y art life, kind of quirky, she doesn't feel like an actor either.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
I have that thought a lot about her. But
Nor,
how was
nor
it
does she
you-
feel like colloquial, obviously, because she's not from the States. She doesn't, there's nothing like provincial about her. Yeah, she feels.
Exactly that.
And there's nothing small about her. And the character
Yeah.
does need to start
Yeah,
off
exactly.
minuscule
Totally,
and
she's
become
hiding.
somebody who rises like a wave.
Yeah.
She just texturally, emotionally, her sensuality, which is so protected. She's been an actress since she was a tiny person as myself. Like I could kind of relate to the ways that she had boxed herself in. And I always find her so visible in the things that she does. And I'm like, I don't think they're showing you, dude. I want to like show you. And
You've actually had this thought from afar.
yes. I was like, I want to know you. I want to show people you the way I see you, even though I'm maybe wrong. I had to meet her. She did an audition, first of all. She did it traditionally. She just sent a tape, and I was like, oh my God.
For your movie.
Yes.
What is the audition scene?
It's the reading and the scene with Kesey when he pats her on the back.
Oh,
instead
that's like
of,
the longest scene.
yeah, they're like, it's the only scene, they're the only two scenes in the movie. And then
Right.
with Claudia, her sister, she has a conversation that was sort of like amalgamized. Doesn't exist in the book at all. Just at some point, the sisters needed to like talk about everything that had happened to them. I wanted to see the way that those two lives could have landed on two individuals and affected them very differently. But then
Yeah.
it's like this shared history, this like secret family thing that
Yeah, of course.
inarticulate, but so known between these two
Of course,
people. And
of course. And she's leaving. She's abandoning her.
yes, and she abandoned her and feels bad about it, and now they're gonna like start this new family, and it's about like,
Yeah.
the ways in which sometimes your writing projects fail. You know what I mean? Like this baby was a bit of a writing project, and she just wasn't like big enough to hold it yet.
Yeah.
So those were the audition scenes. She sent them in.
Did you do a lot of auditions?
Yeah, like I thought I was gonna find someone that we didn't know, because I was like, trying to kind of invent a person. I was trying to, also I was like, it's not about Lydia, it's about like finding somebody who can be like the every girl, or someone smart enough to play, someone kind of in touch with themselves and with enough integrity to play 17 to 37, which is
Yeah.
crazy. And also a writer and somebody who like kind of can be a teacher. And actors, I'm not, this isn't disparaging, but not common to find somebody who could feel like an author. Yeah, and I think Imogen had this kind of big, huge open mouth and just like kind of a body that everyone was like, should you play the part? And I was like, no, I'm like this like jagged arrow. She's like this.
She's got it's that great shot. I saw it in the trailer because I was just watching the trailer before we started, but it was my favorite shot when I watched the movie too. And besides the behind her and she puts the hand on the hip.
Yeah.
It's so great. It's just so powerful.
She's got this unwieldy power.
Yeah.
And when it lands in her hands and she can really like Street Fighter it over to you,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is.
it's really powerful.
Yeah, I don't know. There was just something, and she totally burst open. There's something about her being 35, me being 35. We should have been friends since we were younger. We just never met, and then we did in the perfect time to go. We need to shove everything we've never said to each other into this movie.
Were you thinking of casting somebody like you knew first though, because you probably know half the people who were making or actors in LA. I mean, in our industry.
None of them stuck out. I mean, like I love so many of the actors that I've worked with, but this one, it was like, I just couldn't fathom it. Lydia lived like such a first of all, Lydia was like me, but I didn't think I was right for the part. She was Lydia, who I knew as Lydia Yuknavitch, who obviously is not going to play herself. She's older, whatever. And I was like, okay, why do I want to make this movie? It's to get to know myself. It's to give the gifts of other people getting to know themselves and sharing their interior life. And I was like, Imogen.
Yeah.
I don't think we've been acting since we were kids, but have we ever really done that? Like, this movie is, for us, like, fully, not just one page in a kind of scrapbook of our lives. It is a tent pole of, like, a kind of pivotal, like, nexus point where we were like, we're gonna serve ourselves and each other, and we're gonna like dig into our inner voices. When a woman listens to you, you can hear yourself.
I've never had that happen.
Yes, you have.
Okay.
We've done it. It's not like a binary thing,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it is tough. Like there's a certain sort of like beautiful exchange that you can have with others that just sort of give you keys to your own creative castle.
Really?
And
This
we
is how you
met
felt?
and we were like, oh my God.
Did you meet her like after you had cast her?
Yes, we
I
met.
see. And it was immediately intuitive and clear to you that this person understood you in some way.
Yeah, we just sort of inhabit the same energetic, like,
fascinating.
fumbly but very kind of astute and direct thing when put around the right people.
No,
And
I get
when
it.
not,
And in the
she's like
context.
doing the most sideways, like she's floundering, which I love because the movie flounders and it's like begging people to have a little space for that.
The scene where she's like sitting on the statue.
Yeah.
First of all, it's such an unusual scene. I don't even know how to describe it because it's like this. It's a very strange thing. She's being mean. She's laughing. She's crying. What was that? The nature of the scene? This kind of like strange, like mixture of behaviors.
Absolutely. I mean, like, there's this one line of voiceover that we cut because it was just too on the nose, and I felt like her performance was saying it all. Man, I wish I could remember. She's a sexual battering ram who has rocketed herself onto the top of like, like a sort of penetrative male, like sort of protruding thing that can't touch. Basically, like she's spitting on kindness.
Yeah,
because
exactly,
she totally
exactly.
hates herself. I mean,
Exactly.
she's like 7 years old and just a steel trained barrel who's just
Right,
gonna like
right.
totally infiltrate this boy.
Of course.
He could never stand up to
Right,
that.
right.
But it's like shame meeting shame, and instead of like holding and alleviating, they just kind of explode on each other.
Right.
Like when he walks away and is offended and genuinely like, because he's a tender boy,
He's
he's
put
just
off,
been
right.
like genuinely hurt.
Yeah.
She immediately knows that like he's too good for her. She'll never be able to
Of course.
handle whatever. And so like all she can do is destroy it.
Yeah, that's great.
And it's the same way
Great.
she destroys herself until, it's like you just see like in one moment, the fact that she's like spitting and crying and cackling and then suddenly looks like she's about 5 years old,
Yeah,
even
yeah,
though
yeah.
she's like on top,
Yeah.
is
Right.
at that point the experience.
When I was watching your movie, I was genuinely thinking I'd love to. To me, it seemed like you had created a style that was like all your own, and it feels like you can employ that style with many different stories. Even though you kind of described feeling like this story and this style were perfect match, and they were. But yes, but you have something. You have a gift that I was really astounded by, and I'm wondering, like, do you feel like you could have this kind of style and use it going forward?
I'm always asked if I would like, continue to work as an actor in studio films, or if I think that they're conducive at all to saying anything that feels cathartic, or if it does feel like you're kind of like bottling and selling a homogenized, huge like idea that doesn't land on an individual necessarily, but that kind of just satisfies a large group, but like in an anesthetizing way, but not in a way that it like gives you something. And I just wouldn't do that job. And so like I think moving
Oh, you mean to direct like a more commercial thing?
something more, and more commercial means more standard and more digestible.
Right. In a good way.
Yeah, in a good way, in a great way. Thank you so much.
I see.
love
You
to be
feel
here.
like you wouldn't know what to do with the camera? Stuff like that?
It's just that the reason that I want to be allowed to make movies is to allow for some time to figure out a structure and a mission statement, but within those confines, synapse drives. That it's okay to have one thought lead to another in a way that is present and instinctive, because it is more interesting than the book report that I could write on my impulses towards a story. It just is. And so, like, the next movie that I want to make really does, it utilizes different formats, and not because it's like nerdy film stuff, but because like, I think instead of making movies about what I see, it's like how you see something is so much more interesting.
Is it a crime thriller?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I can see you doing that. Yeah, that's great.
But no, I think
Yeah, I understand. You're saying like the reason you do it is not for that reason. I know. Yeah.
yeah. So the next thing I want to make is
Also, tonally, this kind of style, or its own thing entirely, but not.
it jumps in and out of a few perspectives that should overlap, but that should kind of speak to the nature of transience. Like certain thoughts are completely valid, even if they like drift away like ice cubes in a glass you can't touch. Do you know what I mean? Like those things are just as valid as the big fish that you catch.
Right. Okay, wait.
And it empowers people to think for themselves, and not just like, oh no, I'm not kidding.
I mean,
Fuck you.
Yeah, no, I'm obviously you're right. I
Yeah.
agree with you. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have made that disparaging face. Wait, let me just ask you one last thing, because okay, your movie's coming out soon. We're in December. We're filming this the first day of December. Your movie's coming out soon, and then January 9th, it's coming out to more theaters. Okay, this is not a pitch or to an audience. What I'm going to ask
Remember
you
that.
Yeah, see it in theaters. The sound is great. What I'm asking you is this: do you think about, care about it making money back, especially as you gear up to make your next thing? How do you think about that?
Well, it would be great, because then maybe it wouldn't be as difficult to make my next movie. But at the same time, I also don't. I think the next movie that I want to make actually does function outside of the business structure that we're used to. Like,
People love to hear that. Yeah.
People love to hear that. Yeah, I'm gonna get in trouble. No, but
This
it's
doesn't even exist in your structure. Okay, so here's my
well,
pitch.
it doesn't.
Yeah.
We need to find new terms for all of this, because
exactly.
I'm sorry, like, but the language is oppressive. I'm like, and the structure is oppressive, and it's the barriers.
There's no
are,
English on this set. It doesn't apply to what we're doing.
It's actually the title of the movie is in Spanish. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but
I wouldn't understand it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you're just a dummy. You're just a big dummy.
Yeah. So basically, you care insofar as it helps you make the next one. You care insofar as it pays the people back who paid for it. All that stuff.
For sure.
Do you? Yeah, but you're not caring in terms of what is the thing you don't care about that other people might care about. I don't know the answer to that because people ask me too. I guess I don't care about it being like a, I don't know, successful businessman thing. My mind doesn't go there, or I can't conceive of it.
I guess the cool thing is because I love the movie like I birthed it, and that's
exactly.
a cliche. Everyone talks about the movies that they make like their babies or whatever, but it's having a relationship with the world like totally on its own, and it's like you have a kid, you've had to send him to school. Like that must have been scary to know that he's gonna go have his own life. The movie's gonna have its own life.
Yeah.
It's totally okay for the movie not to make money. It's okay for some people to love it, for some people to hate
Sometimes no one
it.
likes your kid at school.
That's true,
Yeah.
and it's like
And they don't recoup their homework.
right, and
then
it's kind
hard
of
to
your
get-
fault.
Yes,
because
it's hard to get into that next grade. Sometimes you have
Exactly.
to stay back and do a series.
yeah, or I'm just gonna go back to kindergarten.
That's right.
And that'll be my next movie.
Exactly.
Made with Scotch tape and
Yes, and the days are shorter. You're only making short day movies.
yes.
I think we've exhausted everything.
No, I'm gonna do a weird communist movie where like if the leaders are responsible and benevolent and like to treat the people who are
Yes.
then actually it could work quite well.
So the movie is about communism or
No,
the style of
but
making
actually
it
it's not about communism because it is about.
It's the moments in between communism, I think.
I think you should come help me write it.
I would like this. In the meantime, we've said everything we could say. I'm proud of you is weird but I'm older than you, so I guess I could say it.
You can be.
I'm so proud of you. I've loved
I'm
working
so
with
proud
you
of you
so
as
much.
well.
Thank you, but I'm older. You can't be as
But
proud.
are you like in the heart?
No, in the heart I'm younger. But I gotta say, I was like astounded, and
I'm nearing cardiac arrest.
What's that? Why? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just in the heart, though. A very old heart. But
Congenital
I'm
heart
so
disease.
proud of you. You did a thing that, like, I feel like actors are directing stuff. I'm like, I'm so happy when they do something that's like, oh yeah, this is something that it just feels like the thing exactly what you wanted to do, and it's unusual. I'm so happy for you.
I probably would have made this movie if I was never an actor, is the thing. It didn't feel like I was
Exactly.
graduating into like, now I want to check that box. It's like, I think this thing needs to exist.
Exactly. And listen, we're directing everything, but we're also desperate actors. So all I'll say is this: I can learn Spanish
Listen.
for your next project.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And I can push myself. And I know you see me one way, but I can push myself
You
for the project.
contain multitudes, babe.
I do. I haven't been able to show any of them, but I think in this project, I think I could. And if it's a native Spanish speaker, I can learn the accent. But if it's somebody like me who just took high school Spanish, I'll obviously just do a phonetic thing. Anyway, I'd
Maybe you
love
could
to-
put yourself on tape.
That'd be great.
Maybe do a little workshop.
Yes, that's great.
Put
I
you
also
through
have
a
I have a big mouth.
robust audition
Yes.
process.
I have a big mouth. You and I have different body types, so you
I'll
can
have
see me more in
cookies
the role.
there in case your little tummy gets nervous.
That was very sweet. What she's
Yeah.
referring to
I'll
is
never
that
forget.
I couldn't eat for a long time because I was so nervous, and she said, "Just have a cookie," and she gave me a cookie.
Yeah. It was before we had to do a big scene, and I also felt my hands were shaking too, and I was
movie
like,
was this
cookie
on?
time, Adventureland.
Oh, it was on. Okay, it was at our peak of anxiety.
Yeah.
Anyway, so happy to see you.
Yeah.
Next time, I hope it's also in public, that we do an interview together.
I know, and then Imogen's there because she would be so jealous of
yes.
this. Yeah.
Please say hello to her,
I will.
obviously. Okay, thank you.
Okay.